So some of you guys have requested a video on basically flow in a plant tank. And so today I'm going to talk about kind of these two tanks, my 90p and basically our contest 45C, and talk about kind of the flow that I have on there, because those two are really the main bigger tanks. Obviously the smaller tanks, the canisters give plenty of flow, and that really, those tanks are just fine and don't really need to be talked about when it comes to flow just because of the canisters. But mainly I want to talk about some of these bigger systems, and basically that because I do run extra circulation pumps on both of these, and basically I'm going to explain why I do that, and explain basically how much flow you really should have in a plant tank. And so on the 90p and 45C, I have Nero pumps on here, so one of the newer pumps out there by AI, really nice. Obviously app control, it can pretty much do everything. A lot of the more features are towards reefs, but I actually use a lot of features here on the freshwater tanks, which are pretty cool, and I'll show you guys. But I got the 5 and then 3 on here. The 3 would run this 90p no problem, but I just had the bigger one, so actually the 3 wasn't available at the time, so I have a 5. But yeah, 3 could definitely run the 90p for sure, but that's just what that was in stock at the time. But so basically, the reason why we even have flow in a plant tank, obviously that's many reasons. Obviously algae buildup, obviously creating, not having dead spots. Dead spots is what algae love, because algae can actually attach to those dead spots, and that's what's really what you don't want to have in a tank, is those dead spots, so those algae don't have anywhere to actually attach to. When there's so much flow, it's basically harder for algae to attach to surfaces like that. Not 100% of the time, but most of the time, when you don't have dead spots, it really helps in the long run. Of course, a million other things go into actually having an algae-free tank with, lighting, fertilizer, CO2 routine, and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, not having dead spots definitely is, one of the major steps for sure. And so, circulation in a plant tank, if you're running CO2, that's when it's important, because basically the reason why we want significant flow is so we can actually distribute that CO2 around the tank. And so you can see how I have my lily pipes on this side and the diffuser down there, and some people get messed up because I'll put the diffusers on the same side as the outlet, which if there's like on my setup with the Neo 3 here would actually work, and wouldn't actually affect anything. But not all the time will you have an extra circulation pump, and so that's when you want it on the opposite end of the lily pipe, or wherever your outlets are pretty much. And basically what that's doing is, when it's coming out here and the flow's right here, basically what these lily pipes will do, especially with the shape of them, that's why lily pipes are shaped like this flower shape, is to actually create this circular motion. And basically when it comes out, basically what it's going to do is do this circular motion, and that's basically so that CO2 comes up, it's getting this circular motion where it's going to evenly distribute all that CO2 throughout the tank like that. And basically what we don't want is CO2 to rise all the way to the surface and basically dissipate, and then you're not getting as much use. We basically want that CO2 to be in the water column as long as we want, and so that gives us basically almost 100% diffusion basically. Obviously with the diffuser, we usually don't get 100% unless you go inline reactor, but this is going to give us our best percentage of diffusion all the time when we have that circular motion. And of course, like my 45C for example, and I'll get to that, I actually have inline, just because of the fact that the way the flow works, it just would be too weird. So I actually have an inline on there to be more efficient, and plus the tank, it just looks better without a diffuser, the way it's scaped and all that. But that's that's a whole nother story, of course. So the next question is, people ask how much actual flow should you have in a plant tank, and that's honestly up to debate on the setup and basically what you're doing in plants and stock wise, because obviously if you have fish that don't like to get blown around or can't handle the high flow rate, that's a different story. But for example, like in this tank, and I don't know the exact details, I'd have to actually look it up, but I have about 1,500 gallons an hour pushed through this tank, which is a lot. And the reason for that is obviously this being an Iogumi, being more, Iogumis are more represents more of like rivers and stuff like that with all the rock work, and so that's why I have such high flow in this tank. It's kind of resemble that river motion. And of course I have Rui tetras in here and stuff, so stuff that can actually handle a little better. Rui tetras definitely can handle a little bit of flow. They're still on the smaller side, so I can't really blast this tank, but they can handle it obviously better than some of the other smaller species. And And so basically, obviously with this being a bigger tank too, and I run an Awaza 600 filter on here, there's definitely never really enough flow in here. I mean, there's definitely flow, but this stuff gets so clogged sometimes that I don't always want to rely on this being the flow, so that's why I add that Neo 5. And so that basically guarantees that I always at least have some type of flow in here, even if the Awaza is not really, obviously it's still filtering, but sometimes the flow rate really isn't that great, so that's why I have that in there. And if you look closely, you can actually see how the waves are kind of going off and on right there. And that's basically creating a wave. Now you can't really see it probably on the camera, but basically what this tank is doing is swaying back and forth like a wave. And again, that's basically trying to represent kind of a river biotope almost with this UV setup, so I have a lot of flow. So basically the app I have on that AI, the controls I have is basically I have a pulsating wave doing that. So I think I have it on for turning on for like 1 second, and then it turns off for I think 0.25 seconds, so like a quarter of a second. So on for 1 second, off. So it's basically turning on for 1 second and then turning off for just a split second and turning back on. And basically what that's doing is just kind of creating a slight wave, and kind of creating a little bit of a river type flow. And of course, having random flow is also just more natural, and also with algae stuff too, it really helps. Of course, with the pulsating wave, it's pretty much consistent all day long, so really it doesn't really make a big of a difference. But just because of the setup, that's how I have it set up, and I think it looks just pretty cool too. I mean, at the end of the day, does it really need to do that? No, but just being the tank itself, I think that pulsating wave just looks really cool and neat, especially in a ukulele like this. And I think the fish really like it. The shrimp, a lot of the loaches and stuff. And I even have a toy catfish in here, a little smaller species. I think it's about this big. That really likes flow too. So I think the tank itself just really enjoys it. And like I said, it just visually looks cooler too. And then, so if we jump over real quick, I don't want to show this too much because it is the contest tank at the end of the day. So I'll kind of put it at an angle. It's looking really good though. So I have a Neo 3 right here. So basically same deal. You can actually see it really good on here. I actually have that pulsating wave on this one too. And obviously with this scape, that obviously it doesn't really need it either, but I do have some Japanese gobies that love flow. So this actually has quite a bit of flow. I think I have 700-800 gallons an hour pushing on this one. And of course I have some triple Danos, again, can handle a little more flow. And main reason why I have one here for sure is because, again, I have a 88 Superjet running this tank at 300. Pushes a lot of flow, but it is a little too small for how much it has to push all the way up here. And so really realistically, I probably need like a 600 running this tank, which I down the road may actually upgrade to. But for now, this doesn't really push out the greatest flow. And of course, with the scape, the way the scape is, it just doesn't. It's hard to really get flow throughout the whole tank, especially with the outlets being on the back like this. It is pretty difficult, and so that's why I have this on the side. So basically, again, we're getting that circular motion in the tank with that Neo 3 on here, and this is exactly what that thing's doing. And of course, down in the cabinet, I have inline CO2 because obviously with the diffuser, it would have to go on like the side, and which we could actually do that now that there is a Neo 3 on here. We could definitely do that, but again, for looks and stuff like that, I actually have an inline in here. I think a little more efficient, better resolve rate, and then obviously we don't have to look at a diffuser in the tank at all. And with this scape, I think having little as equipment as possible is like perfect, and this tank just looks so good. I mean, this is just a side angle you guys are looking at, and you can just see how visually nice it's looking so far. So, and of course, I do have an actual N5 on here, which is just a twin star reactor on here for algae. It really doesn't need to be on there anymore, but mainly in the beginning setups I had that on there, so that Neo 3 is helping push that around too. But yeah, basically the whole point of this video is mainly just describing the flow on my setup. It's just a real quick rundown, but I don't want to make this video too long. So if you guys have questions, if anything I missed, if you want to have questions on anything, just definitely let me know. But I think the biggest thing, the takeaway is, obviously the flow just for that CO2 diffusion rate is the biggest thing. At the end of the day, unless you have a certain species, I mean, you really don't need really as much flow for fish. I mean, they could care less at the end of the day. But, some species definitely love some little bit of flow. Like I said, I have a crimson goby in there, a Japanese crimson goby, and it definitely loves flow, so I definitely turn it up a little bit just for him. But yeah, and then another important thing, of course, with the Neo 3s app controlled, you can control the actual intensity of the percentage of how much is pushing. That's really nice. Of course, some pumps are just off and on. Most of them are those a little bit cheaper ones that don't have the app controls, and that's the only thing that sucks about those is it's just one speed all day long. And with these, you can actually at least customize your setup a little bit. Where if you ever do need a little bit more, you can go on the app and just increase it a little bit. So that always makes it nice. So, but yeah, like I said, if you guys have any questions, my Instagram is JJ Aquariums, so you guys can check that out. Everything's on my YouTube and bio, so you can definitely click all the links on there. But other than that, if you have any questions, just let me know. But other than that, I'll see you guys on the next one.